望むところ、これは巫女様にお返しします。
わかった。ありがとう。そなたを待ち受けるのは今までをも超えた艱難深苦の道だが、そなたならば越えられる。狼よ、そう信じているぞ。
Nice. I did spend a lot of time spam blocking in the last playthrough. Chip damage from bosses though is gonna be mental. 30% damage? I'm just gonna have to avoid most of their attacks, aren't I? Blocking is no longer an option. So that's what that does. The charm prevents you from taking chip damage. What? Ah, what? The boss boy is gone. Hopefully he just moved. You can die in this area. And if you do, you lose like all your shit, apparently. That's where the secret passage is, over there. There he is. I got no XP right now. Seems to be everyone. Now, I just assumed I'd be able to defend myself from door to door. and potentially attempt to win the fight, even though I know, or I'm 99.7% certain that I actually can't win the fight.
この橋の下、堀のどんず、あそこも見張りせよとの仰せじゃと。なんとも限界なことじゃ。戦が近いのかもしれんの。
Oh.
狼をよく見つけてくれた。さあ参ろう。
御意。
血の定めから逃れることしかできぬとはな。この城を出ていずこへ参ろうか。まずはアシナの国を離れるか、あるいはどこかに身を隠すか。そなたはどう思う？
御意のままに。
御意か。そなたは変わらぬな。いや、懐かしいと思うてな。さあ参ろう。
久しいな、巫女よ。叔父上の墓前以来か。
源一郎殿、私はすまぬ。
お任せを。
邪魔立てするか、巫女の忍びを。芦名源一郎、参る。破れられぬ。
Oh. That's frustrating. Oh. Oh. No! Did it work? I'm pretty sure this is the only time I can have this fight. I don't know if it's winnable. I think it also very likely I already lost. I mean, yes. But, let's find out. That was definitely me in the under tunnel, wasn't it? Yeah.
忍びとてこの程度か。巫女はもらっていくぞ。
No! I'm so upset.
目覚めたようじゃな。どうやらまだ死の定めではないと見える。お前さん、名は何と言え。その目、さしずめ、任に敗れた狼といったところ。わしは仏を掘らなきゃなら、お前さんはお前さんで好きにしな。わしが掘る仏はどうやったって怒り顔だ。業深いものはそうなる。お前さんもいつか掘ってみればわかるだろうさ。それで何か用か。
何言う。
ただ屍野良犬
どれほど。
じゃアシナの城でだがお前さんを見れば
巫女様の血が利用され。
わしも竜、そう呼ばれる主の助。お前その荒れ寺には寺を出て右手の広場にも妙なことになって気が合うかも。
Let me see if I can change the language settings to English. Oh, cool. Seems like there is no English. Language.
You truly returned from the dead. The power of the dragon's blood. I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes.
Who are you?
My name is Emma. I am a doctor serving a certain master.
What master?
Forgive me, but for his safety, I cannot reveal his identity. However, my master gave explicit orders to assist you in any way I can. I'm not telling you to trust me. However, I must fulfill my master's orders. The gourd of medicinal water you possess, that was originally a creation of mine. I am a doctor, and I will assist you in that capacity.
You made this gourd.
Yes, it was intended for Lord Kuro, but it seems he entrusted it to you. I'm sure you may have noticed, but the medicinal waters in this gourd spring forth on their own. Even after being emptied, you will find it full again after a short rest.
Yes. Is there a way to improve it?
Bring me gourd seeds.
Gourd seeds?
Yes, medicinal waters flow from gourd seeds. Adding new seeds will increase the volume of these medicinal waters. If you find any, bring them to me.
All right.
I'd like to make a request.
What is it?
Please show me your face.
What?
This white mark, is it a birthmark?
No.
Then that must mean it appears on those who have received the dragon's heritage. Or perhaps it's a symptom.
Are you done?
Yes, that will be all. I'm sorry. That was rather rude of me. Goodbye.
Never seen you before. Your name? Won't tell me. But you do have the look of a skilled shinobi. A shinobi. Or perhaps... Sir, please heed my humble request. Face me in battle. Damn. Still alive. That swordsmanship. It was a thing to behold. Few have managed to kill me in such a thorough manner.
What are you?
Some call it undying. Others, infested. I can't die, so I just am. How about you? What brings you to a rundown temple like this? Seems you have a lot on your mind. Say, why don't you use me for some sword practice? Might come in handy for whatever your mission is. A warm body that can't die might prove useful to you. I volunteer mine. Well?
No.
Is that so? Well, I can't force you. I thought it might help to pass the time. Let me know if you have a change of heart.
Needless to say. The non-Japanese voice actors are not the best. Anyway, I'm gonna get a new drink. This one tastes gross. Yeah. For everyone at home, I kicked the desk. I kicked my door with my toe really hard, and it's bleeding. And it hurts. It's a huge oof. Such as it do be. Let's see how much XP I get from these real early boys. I couldn't see the XP. What if I put it in this corner? Does that help me at all? I don't think so. No. Anyway, let's move it. Where is my camera isn't here, is it? Oh, okay. Well, nothing I can do about it. Hopefully it's working okay. My foot's still throbbing. Okay, we're gonna be grinding for a little bit, so let's get up our first fucking lore video, boys.
How's it going, guys, and welcome back. In this video we're going to be checking out everything you need to know about New Game Plus in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. The first and most important question most people have about New Game Plus in this game is, do you automatically get forced into New Game Plus once you finish the final boss, or can you continue free roaming around your previous playthrough and then venture into New Game Plus whenever you choose to? And fortunately, the answer to this is that after defeating the boss, we do get the choice of whether we want to go straight into New Game Plus or we want to continue roaming around in the previous playthrough, in case we maybe want to continue exploring some of the late game areas we wouldn't have access to if we ventured into New Game Plus, or some mini bosses, or maybe just to stack up on some extra items before starting over. If we do decide to stay in the previous playthrough for a little bit longer, when we are ready to go to New Game Plus, all we need to do is go to the idol at the central top area of the temple and still have an option at the bottom saying venture forth into the next New Game Plus. The next most common question about New Game Plus is which of our items do we get to keep, what passes onto the next playthrough, and what gets left behind. For the most part, you keep pretty much everything. You keep all of your skills, special attack power, and vitality will also carry on over. You keep pretty much all of your items except specific key items that are used to progress the story. You do seem to lose the hearts of the serpent that are needed for the secret ending. If you did have them on the previous playthrough, you don't seem to have those on your next playthrough. You also keep all of your prosthetic tools, all of your prosthetic tool upgrades, all of your materials. For the most part, anything you'd naturally expect to carry on over to the New Game Plus will, and anything like keys and stuff you need to access areas you shouldn't yet have access to won't carry on over. This is pretty standard practice in most of FromSoft games. Also, for those of you who may play Dark Souls, you're probably wondering about the gourd upgrades, the gourd seeds, and the prayer beads. Can we just collect all of them again once we have New Game Plus to get more instead of doing every single mini boss in the game? We can't actually do this. By this I mean, while we can continue collecting the prayer beads and gourd seeds that we didn't yet have in the previous playthrough, so say there's a mini boss we didn't kill in our first playthrough, we can now kill that mini boss in New Game Plus and get the prayer bead from him. However, the ones we did already get, let's say for example the gourd seed we can obtain just after beating the ogre mini boss, that instead of being a gourd seed, it will be a different item. Usually these unique items get replaced by either Buddha statues, divine grass, or simply purses of gold. So just to recap, you can't collect the ones you already had collected in the previous playthrough, but you can continue getting the ones you haven't yet got. As we said before, all of your skills you have unlocked will carry over at exception of the mortal blade and the breathing technique, the one to dive underwater, as they are story related. You will need to collect those again in your next playthrough. Obviously, all NPCs will reset. Anyone you may have killed accidentally will be respawning as it is a brand new playthrough. And as far as difficulty goes in New Game Plus, for each New Game Plus you take more posture damage and more actual damage as well per hit. And one of the most noticeable things about New Game Plus is that your posture gauge will replenish a lot slower than it did in your first playthrough. So this is going to make you have to deflect more attacks instead of just straight up guarding against everything. And now, surprisingly enough, this next thing isn't actually unique to New Game Plus. However, some people may not know this, that once you've finished a playthrough on Sekiro, next time you start a save file on that same account, whether it be a New Game Plus on that same character or simply a brand new playthrough, at the start of the game, down in the well, when you pick up the letter, you'll now also get Kudo's charm. This will only appear once you finish the game at least once. And then when we meet Kudo, when we go to rescue him, we'll have the option to give the charm to him. Now, by giving him the charm, it will make the game more difficult. And to be precise, the way it becomes more difficult is that while we don't have the charm, if we do decide to give it back to Kudo, we'll take a bit of damage even when blocking. And this is pretty much against any mob, like the first enemies in the game, who normally can completely block out all of their damage just by holding down the block button, will actually take damage every time we block one of their attacks if we don't perfectly parry or deflect the attack. So this is definitely a huge increment in difficulty, and it's really going to make you try to learn the deflect patterns instead of just trying to block many of the attacks. And if you decide to do that in New Game Plus, that's definitely going to be one of the biggest difficulties. But also, it's a very cool feature for those of you who like to challenge yourself. If you do decide to put this into Kudo and then halfway through the playthrough decide it's a little bit too much, you can actually go back to the sculptor and ask for Kudo's charm back, and you can retrieve this charm to take away this sort of debuff. Now, this next thing I'm about to say, I haven't had a chance to confirm it 100% for sure myself, as it wasn't the first ending I got, but apparently if the only ending you have done is the shorter ending, the bad ending, you won't actually get this Kudo's charm at the beginning of the next playthrough. If anyone can confirm that, that would be great. Also, other questions you may have, the difficulty does increase all the way up into New Game Plus 7. Anything after New Game Plus 7, you can continue doing more playthroughs, however the difficulty won't scale any higher than that. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about New Game Plus. I hope you did find this video helpful, guys. If you have any other questions about this topic, please do leave them in the comments below, and I or anyone else in the community will be happy to try their best to answer. So if you did enjoy this video, don't forget the thumbs up button, subscribe for more content coming very soon, and we'll see you next time.
Now let us leave this place.
Nice. So he only has one video on it, on the topic. This guy has all the bosses' lore, it seems. Let's check him out.
Cursed.
Fuck it, dude. Let's play them all.
Unlike prior entries in the Soul
That was loud.
series, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is a game that is actually set within a real-world historical period, the Sengoku period of medieval Japan. Of course, other Souls games have been influenced by real-world culture and history, the most obvious being Bloodborne, being inspired by Victorian England. We can expect that Sekiro will have a different experience from a lore and setting perspective, and I for one am very interested in what we can expect from the experience. Whilst it will have its own identity and story separate from reality, the inspiration for this has been drawn from this real period. In an interview with Game Informer, linked below, Tetsu Takahashi, the concept designer for the game, said that they wanted to create something exciting in an authentic Japanese setting, and it was something that was really refreshing for the team. For me, this means that we can expect we will have the same From Software creativity when it comes to enemies, stories and creatures, but it will be imposed upon a real period of history. This history will help set the scene for a mythical story that From Software wants to tell. Miyazaki talks about the reasons behind choosing this period over the Edo period in an interview with Famitsu. He says, with regards to conceit, Warring States is closer to the Middle Ages, which has more of a mythological feel, and Edo is closer to the modern age, with more of a living, breathing feel. Then we chose the end of the period in order to incorporate the idea of decay. My conception of Japanese beauty requires it. We can see there are a number of reasons that Miyazaki chose this period, but he wanted to choose a period that was not only chaotic and full of war, but one that had a mythological feel to it, so that history and myth could be blended into the fictional story that he wants to tell. In Sekiro, we have the ability to go back and view the events of the past, and it is this aspect of the lore that I will talk to you about today. But before we begin, please bear in mind that this video will contain spoilers, and if you haven't played through the game and you don't want to be spoiled, please do that and then come back to this lore video later. 3 years ago from the current day, the Hirata estate, the estate of your lord, was raided and sacked by a group of well-informed bandits. One among their number, that we meet in the present day, says that they chose this time perfectly to raid the Hirata estate, whilst most of the warriors were at war. People we meet remember us being there for this event, including the prince, and the bandit turned merchant that we meet later on. At the beginning of the game, the prince asks us if we remember that night, and conspicuously, Sekiro cannot remember this event. As mentioned, we meet one of these bandits in present day on the Ashina outskirts, who is now turned into a trader. He tells us that he remembers meeting us that night, yet we cannot seem to recall it at this point. And that is at least 2 people who remember us being there, yet Sekiro cannot. Why? Well, that is because he has not lived through this event yet, even though it happened 3 years ago. It is something that the wolf will live through after he loses his arm. We visit this memory by offering a special item to the Buddha's image, the item known as the Young Lord's Bell Charm. Now it's important to keep in mind that this artifact is of the Young Lord and not Sekiro. The Bell Charm's description tells us that you can offer it on behalf of someone else, and indeed this is a custom. The sculptor tells us that by doing this, we will awaken old memories, and as a result of delving into these memories, we are actually transported to the Hirata estate as it burns. We now stand in a different place, in a different time. We stand at the edge of the Hirata estate as it burns. A survivor at the entrance of the burning estate informs us that the day is actually 3 years past. However, we are not merely seeing a flashback, for upon hearing this revelation, Sekiro eternally expresses his surprise that he has experienced something right now in his present timeline that happened 3 years ago. He comments on the fact that this is an old memory, yet he cannot remember this. We are also in possession of our current prosthetic arm. Yet despite him not remembering this event, people recall us being here during the fall of this estate. The prince and our bandit friend both recall us being here during these events. So what is happening here, and how is this all possible? I would like to offer you my explanation as to what's going on here. Exploring the past through memories is not something new from From Software, and whilst Dark Souls are not the same game or same universe as Sekiro, it does give it an insight into the direction that From are taking us on. In Dark Souls 2, you could visit the memories of others, but rather than just viewing these memories as a passenger or reliving them, you're actually able to interact and change things and physically be present in the past events through these memories. To me, this is what's happening when we visit Hirata Estate. Despite being 3 years ago, the Sekiro that is living through these events is the one from the present. The Bell Charm is named as the Bell Charm of the Young Lord, our Lord. Sekiro quite rightly identifies this as an old memory, but it is not his memory, but it's the memory of the Young Lord, who owns the item that we offer to the Buddha. And this explains why Sekiro does not remember it. We use this Bell Charm, and in return we are allowed to enter into the past through the Young Lord's memory attached to this artifact. Sekiro does not remember these past events, because he actually hasn't lived them yet. My theory is that Sekiro of that present time was absent from the events, at least in the way that we play them out in the gameplay. Yet everything we do in this episode has already happened for everyone else because they recall it, including our bandit friend. We do meet our bandit from the future here, in the meeting in Hirata Estate. This is just happening for Sekiro, yet the bandit, this happened 3 years ago, which is why he remembers meeting us in the present. To me, this is the only thing that makes sense, that we are now living through these events as the present Sekiro, rather than us viewing this or reliving it as a past memory. He possesses the prosthetic arm, which means in this memory, as we play it out, we are capable of feats that the past Sekiro would not have been able to. Upon Lady Butterfly's defeat, she expresses admiration as to how much more powerful we are, more powerful than she expected. We know that from Lady Butterfly's remnant, that she was one of his mentors, and thus is a good judge in what she could expect from Sekiro. She is surprised because she is not fighting the Sekiro she expects, but in fact is facing the one from the future, who has 3 years more experience and his new prosthetic arm. The young lord remembers this event, for we showed our loyalty, and as far as he knew, it was the Sekiro from the present. And as a result, he gave us the dragon blood at the end. Despite this being a future event for us, he bestowed it upon us in the past. To surmise my theory, we enter the past through the memories of the young lord. We are not only viewing these, but acting these out as our now and present self. But this is history to a lot of people, a history that not many people will quickly forget. As the events of this raid come to an end, we black out and find ourselves in the present again, the timeline reasserting itself back to normality after a bit of a Sekiro crossover. Whilst the Sekiro of the future played out those events 3 years ago, we have now returned to the future, and now it has become our history as well. So thanks guys, hope you enjoyed that Sekiro lore theory video. To me this is the only thing that makes sense, given that we actually are using Sekiro of the present skills and abilities in the past, and like I said, exploring the past through memories is something that From Software are kind of likely to do. So if you enjoyed this lore video, please give me a like and a subscribe, because I'm going to be running Sekiro for a good bit of time. I'm loving the lore in this game. Please let me know what you think of what happens on the Hirata estate. This is of course my interpretation. Thanks guys, and I'll see you soon. The dragon's heritage that has been bestowed upon the divine heir allows true immortality. However, there are those that attempt to find other ways to emulate immortality through the rejuvenating waters sprung from the dragon's blood, the undying infested, and there are those who have attempted to artificially recreate the dragon's blood itself. Senpo Temple is, on the face of it, a traditional Buddhist temple, occupied by monks. However, we will soon learn that looks are very deceiving, and in fact there is something far more sinister at work here. As we enter the grounds of the temple, we hear a voice speaking to us from the image of a Buddha. It speaks as a warning as to what awaits us in the temple grounds. Whether this is the Buddha itself, or some other positive spirit, it doesn't matter. The voice tries to warn us away from the temple grounds. It states,
"Those of the Senpo Temple have strayed from Buddha's teachings. They have abandoned their faith, seduced by a search for immortality. Should you be captured, there is no telling what would become of you."
This is the first hint of the unethical research that is going on here. These monks are now no longer concerned with their religious practices. Despite their appearance, they have abandoned all faith for their obsession with immortality and the rejuvenating waters. These people have taken to experimenting, researching, and abducting in an attempt to recreate the dragon's heritage and the immortality bestowed by such. The result is the divine children of the rejuvenating waters, who possess an artificial and warped version of the dragon's heritage. The divine children are a testament to the rejuvenating waters' power, for they too possess extraordinary healing powers. The monks at this temple will go to any means necessary to achieve the aims of attaining immortality. The rat assassins hail from here, stalking the land for potential abductees. Indeed, our friend, Black Hat, was among them, but he tells us that the experiments and the abduction of people didn't feel right to him, and so he left the temple. Indeed, it seems as though people were aware of the monk's corruption, for Ishin himself says the following in regards to those at Senpou Temple. Who knows what those degenerates are doing shut up away in the mountains? Ishin knows that the monks are degenerates because of their heretical and deprived means that they go to. In the grounds of the temple, we find various corpses laid out and desecrated, failed experiments and victims of the monks' madness. Many of the monks seem to be infested, immortal, undying, but occupied by a centipede-like parasite which keeps them in an undead state. This is obviously one of the options they have chosen to try and achieve immortality, for being infested in this temple seems to be a position of great honour, for we often see those who are infested being surrounded by devotees. In a lower building, we find a room filled with man centipedes, who to me would be failed experiments in attempting to unlock the power of the undying, as the infested appear to have centipede-like parasites in them, and so to me, these centipedes are certainly a failed experiment as a cross between the centipede parasite and humans, but they failed and been left to rot. Indeed, it even appears that those from other continents had heard of the rejuvenating waters and the works at Senpou, for on our way up to the temple, on a bridge, we face an armoured warrior who seems to be equipped in Western medieval gear, suggesting he has travelled all the way to Japan. This is confirmed by the item Robert's firecrackers, which we can trade to give us the shinobi tool. Its description states,
I know
sold
you.
by little Robert and his
Yeah.
father to
You're
raise
that good
funds
Sir
for their
Shinobi,
travels.
sir, huh? Well, I haven't seen
Their
you
voyage
since-
brought them to
well,
Japan,
since that
where they
night.
would seek the undying in an
What
attempt
night?
to extend Robert's life.
You don't remember?
Robert is the son of this warrior, for he cries out his name in anguish as he dies.
Listen,
Whether
sir,
Robert is ill or
you and
not,
I,
or whether
we met
the man
before.
just wants
I was
his
a
son
thief
to
back
live forever,
then.
what is
Those
clear
days
is that this
are
warrior
behind me.
has come
Now,
to Japan
I'm an
and to
upright,
Senpou
honest
Temple,
merchant. Only problem
drawn by the
is,
stories of immortality,
being broke,
in
I don't
order
have
to
anything
extend
sell,
his
so
son's life.
that isn't what-
As we fight him, he does indeed
Here's some
exclaim
coin.
that his son will have the
Thanks,
waters
good
of
sir.
rejuvenation.
Now talk.
Yes, yes,
However,
yes, of course.
this
That
knight
night.
stands in our way,
So my gang
and unfortunately for
broke into
him
the Hirata
and his
estate.
son, he must fall from the bridge.
For a price, for a price, of course. I'm a merchant now.
I'll buy some.
Thank you very. Since you're a shinobi, I'll give you some information about shinobi tools.
If you could.
Now, I've seen this tube, huh? When we broke into the Hirata estate, one of my pals nabbed one. That's the sound the fire makes when it...
I have one.
I'll tell you that... What?
I said I already have one.
Huh? Oh. Well, that's a shame. That one's on me.
Cool.
We can see the results of the monks tampering with immortality. As mentioned, we have the infested undead, and we have the man centipedes. And although the infested seem to be held in great honour here, because they are functionally immortal, they are in fact just puppets for these parasites that exist within their bodies. However, the greatest achievement of the temple comes in the form of the divine children of the rejuvenating waters. When Sekiro returns to the young lord, he tells the prince of this place, and that the monks had created those with false dragon's heritage. Yet one survived the creation
Sorry
of
about the
all the
conflicting
children.
audio.
This child is described to us by one of the monks that we meet in the main hall. This monk describes the child as holy, and that they are sealed away in the inner sanctum. But why are these children called the divine children of the waters of rejuvenation? For that, we have to understand what the waters of rejuvenation are. Thankfully, this lore is given to us during a remnant discussion between Lady Emma and Kuro. They state,
Those who drink it cannot fully die. No, they become unable to die at all. The rejuvenating water, it also...
It springs from the dragon's blood, does it not?
Yeah.
Here we learn that the rejuvenating water brings undeath and is likely the source of Genichiro's undeath, given that Kuro describes it as Ashina's secret weapon. It is also mentioned that this water also springs from the dragon's blood, and is therefore a derivative of the dragon's heritage. Thus explains its life-giving quality, and the interest it is generated in these monks. It is these waters that the divine children, in my opinion, have been created from. And it is the waters such as these that people like Robert's dad have come to claim for their fabled regenerating properties. The monk we speak to in the main hall asks us to pass on a text to the divine child, which is Holy Chapter Infested. This is a very important piece of lore, and I will read it. For an age, I have been blessed by the worm. To be undying is to walk the eternal path of life. Thus I must become enlightened, to understand why I cannot die. It is said the holy dragon's origins were in the west, so I wonder how the worm came to be bestowed. Firstly, we know that this is a text written by the High Priest of Senpou, as it tells us in the option that is given to us when we go to pass it to the divine child. This implies that the monks aspire to become like the infested High Priest because of the degenerate form of mortality it gives, with what they call the worm. And the way this hierarchy works, the higher up being blessed with this parasite. Given that the child of the rejuvenating water is in possession of a derivative version of the divine dragon's blood, could it be that the worm is a derivative and stagnant form of immortality that was once the divine blood of the dragon or the rejuvenating waters?
All I know is what Dogen,
I believe
the
so,
dragon's heritage,
given that we are always
bestowed.
taught
However,
about the stagnation
it is
that
repeated
immortality
use
comes.
leads to stagnation,
It makes sense to me
which will eventually
that
reach
the
a point
divine power
that
given by the
overflows.
divine dragon goes
This
from being
causes those
the
who do not
divine
have
dragon's
the
blood,
power to
the
become
rejuvenating
a
waters,
disease
and then
known
finally,
as dragon rot.
cursed
He
by
knew
the
much
undying,
about it,
the worm.
but even so,
This is the stagnation
unable
that
to
can be
determine
found
a cure.
within the
Forgive
immortality.
me.
Is there a
And
way
thus,
to treat
I think
this
this is the
dragon?
I do
worm
not
that is
know.
being referred to in the
However,
text,
It
a
must be
derivative
stopped.
version
I am
of the
unsure.
immortality given
But the
by the
first
divine
step
dragon.
is to look through my mentor's
But feel free
research
to interpret that
and see
as you
if
will.
I can discover.
Thank you.
But why are these children called
So,
the divine
then,
children
or
of the rejuvenating waters? As I mentioned before, I believe that these children are created from the rejuvenating water. Given that the divine child we meet does have powers of regeneration through the rice that she gives us and other means, it makes sense that this is linked to her heritage, or her blood's heritage, from the rejuvenating waters. Going back to Sekiro's report to Kuro, he mentions that the monks created fake or artificial dragon's blood, and I believe that this blood
I can't
was
cure
drawn
you.
from the rejuvenating waters and then somehow put into the children, and the result is the only surviving divine child of the rejuvenating water, and the rest died as a part of this process. Either way, what is clear is that messing with the divine and artificially recreating it has some dire consequences, as we can see from the stagnation that is taking place in the Senpou Temple. we do finally get to meet the Divine Child after making our way through the halls of illusion. We are granted an audience in the inner sanctum. This Divine Child tells us that her dragon's blood is false, and that it was created, it is the work of men who were obsessed and desperate for immortality, and that is the monks of Senkai Temple. Everything we see in this temple is an attempt to recreate immortality, but their greatest achievement and their most holy artifact of this game is the Divine Child of Rejuvenation. The Divine Child tells us that there were children, but none else survived the process. Who knows what abnormal process they had to go through to become the Divine Children. The rise that the child gives us tells us that even though the heritage is false, it still has a power. And the rice is very telling of these regenerative powers that are obviously drawn from the original source, the rejuvenating waters, given that they have extremely potent healing abilities. It is for these reasons that no doubt people like the Armoured Warrior travelled here. Indeed, she is able to manipulate the power of the SEKIRO to extend our immortality. She is also powerful enough to complete the cradling ritual, where she will hold Lord Kuro's essence within her own heart, allowing her to travel the air safely to the birthplace of the dragon, the west. This is significant, and despite all the stagnation that is common in Senpai Temple due to her immortality and the rejuvenating waters, it is clear that this Divine Child is in some ways as powerful as Kuro. The monk we speak to in the main hall emphasises how highly the monks value the child, because the child is referred to as holy. The monks revere her as their most holy object, for their object of worship is immortality, and the Divine Child represents that better than anything else. However, when we pass her the book, the infested holy chapter, it is clear that she wants nothing to do with the monks, and she tells us that she still despises them. And to me it seems as though she is here against her will, and she does not partake in this religion. And who can blame her, given what horrible experiments she was known to subject to, and seeing the death of her Divine Children sibling. So thanks guys, that's my take on the Divine Children of Rejuvenation, the rejuvenating waters, and the corruption that takes place at Senpai Temple. If you like this video, please give me a like and a subscribe. I will be doing a lot more Sekiro lore content because I love the game and I love the story. Thanks for sticking around guys, have a good night. One of the first characters that we meet on our journey is the Sculptor, an ex-shinobi who drags our unconscious body from our battle with Genichiro to the dilapidated temple. This man shows us, in his own grumpy way, kindness. He replaces our arm and equips us with upgrades, which allow us to pursue our vengeance and our mission. He says he will offer us shelter anytime, and indeed his temple and companionship become a sort of home for us. Yet this mysterious man does have a history. He is nicknamed Orangutan by Emma, and was once a shinobi like we are now. The prosthetic arm was in fact developed for him, and the prosthetic esoteric text is a collection of research and experience that the sculptor has gained by wielding the prosthetic arm. When you bring the sculptor your first shinobi tool to put into the prosthetic arm, he describes the various ways in which you can use these tools to slaughter your enemies. The conversation between us goes like this.
Fitting more devices? means more ways to slay your enemies. If there's someone that needs killing, there's a proper way to kill them. That's all there is to it.
Seems you know this prosthetic very well.
I should calm myself. The more I speak of bloodshed, the more demonic my sculptures will become.
Firstly, Wolf comments on how well the orangutan knows this item, and indeed, this ex-shinobi did once use this weapon to great effect to destroy his enemies. The collection of skills in the prosthetic esoteric text implies that he was an extremely skilled shinobi. Indeed, he is recognized by other shinobi. For if you fight Owl in the past in the Hirata estate, if you use the prosthetic arm, he recognizes this arm and knows who it used to belong to. If the orangutan's reputation is known by the master shinobi Owl, we can assume that this shinobi was a force to be reckoned with. Yet how and why did he become the one-armed sculptor if he was once a skilled shinobi? If you share a drink with him, he will tell you what happened.
Ache.
Your left arm?
Yes, and this sake was a favorite of the man who cut it off.
Who was?
Lord Ishin.
Ishin. Why?
He did it for my sake. I was on the verge of being consumed.
Consumed by what?
Shura.
We can therefore see that it was Lord Ishin who cut off the sculpture's arm, and essentially left him in the state that we find him today. Yet the sculptor seems grateful for this, that Ishin did it for his own good. For the sculptor tells us that he was becoming Shura. Shura has a couple of different meanings in Japanese. Firstly, it can be used to describe the Buddhist demigod of war. It can be also used to describe someone who has become lost to their own bloodlust and must fight relentlessly against anyone and anything, causing extreme violence and devastation. This can also be our fate if we so choose the Shura ending. In this ending, Wolf becomes an unstoppable killing machine, killing for the sake of it. Shura. He is a man who abandoned the path of the Shin tool, and the collection of the sculptor's works in the esoteric text show that even after this, the sculptor was close to igniting the flames of hatred. But he abandoned the path of the shinobi. The prosthetic esoteric text description states, written by a man who abandoned the path of the shinobi, but could not bring himself to discard his painstaking research. The fact the sculptor was losing himself after gaining his prosthetic arm is backed up by the description of the living force skill in the prosthetic skill line, which states, the sculptor retired the shinobi prosthetic after the development of this technique. He'd gone too far, killed too many. The flames of hatred had began to manifest. With the dialogue mentioned before, and these descriptions, we can see a foreshadowing of this man's future. The flames of hatred manifesting themselves within the sculptor. Yet, as mentioned before, he put aside the life of a shinobi in order to save himself from this fate. He would then take up sculpting Buddha, and essentially, this is what he's still doing today. But why does he do this? Well, he tells us this is the fate for having a karmic debt. As the evidence has shown us, this ex-shinobi has killed many people, and this is his karmic debt. And by carving the Buddhas, he hopes to pay off that debt before it's too late. However, his proximity to hatred and rage translates into these sculptures. In fact, when we get him talking about using his tools for killing, he tells us that he needs to calm down, for his sculptures become more demonic as he becomes more enraged. When we return from the Hirata estate memory, we speak of what we saw. We then ask the sculptor what he saw. He says this.
Sculptor, what did that Buddha show you? Were you listening? Tell me.
Flame. That is all I can see. It doesn't matter what I find. Flames, spreading as far as my eye can see, and consuming Ashina.
That's...
At first, this may just appear to us to be a kind of generic feature of what exists for Ashina, given the tumultuous period that we are in. However, it is instead a vision of what he will become, a vessel for the demonic, the vessel for hate and wrath incarnate. The one-armed shinobi becomes the demon of hatred. War comes to Ashina, and war brings strife, and in this strife, the fires that the sculpture has seen consumes him. The description of the demon of hatred's remnant says this. A man who failed to become Shura instead became a vessel for the flames of hatred. As fate would have it, he was stubbornly bound to this world. It wasn't until he became a demon that he was finally able to depart next. Indeed, we see the demon is one-armed, with a prosthetic of sorts, which he wields to bring destruction to Ashina. There is one person we know who had one arm and who failed to become Ashura, and this is our friend the sculptor. The internal ministry's camp has been burned by the demon. We see their soldiers panicking. Most likely, the sculptor's hatred overflowed when their forces arrived to bring violence to Ashina, and he became a vessel for a demonic presence which was fueled by his hatred. We owe it to our good friend to put him down and let him rest. When we speak to the old woman in the tower after we defeat the demon, she states this.
You know, don't you? You know who the one-armed demon was before.
No.
I see. It might be better that way. What a fate. To be set ablaze in the fires of hatred and suffer eternally as a demon.
She emphasizes that he is one-armed, and that he was consumed by the fires of hatred, and that he had been so close to his whole life. Sekiro does not know who the demon was, but we do, and it is probably better for him that he does not. Indeed, as we execute the demon, the sculptor speaks out from within, and thanks us for ending his misery, as the old woman had said. However, the old woman's warning rings in our ear, that we should not go the same way, consumed by our bloodlust and hatred, as this war in Ashina continues to go on, and indeed across Japan of the Sengoku period. Thanks guys, that's my take on the Demon of Hatred, aka the Sculptor. If you'd like any more Sekiro content, please subscribe and like this video for more, as I love the game and I'll keep doing more until I run out of things to say. Thanks guys, and have a good day. Most likely, the first time you'll hear the name Tomoe is during your rooftop confrontation with Genichiro. After you beat him, he discards his armor and draws power and strength from the lightning, proclaiming this to be the lightning of Tomoe. The game HUD tells us that this form is the way of Tomoe. Genichiro's combat style is very unique and seems to be able to wield lightning as a weapon. After our fight, we can share a cup of sake with his grandfather, Ishin, who is eager to know how skilled a combatant his grandson was. Sekiro comments on the fact that Genichiro was strong yet had an unusual style of combat, including being able to manifest the lightning of Tomoe. Ishin explains that this was a technique of Genichiro's mentor, Lady Tomoe.
Exactly is the lightning of Tomoe?
That is a technique belonging to Genichiro's mentor. I'll wager it was quite the sight.
His mentor?
Tomoe. There aren't many masters of the sword like her. To see her fight, it's like she's dancing. When you look into her eyes, you feel as if you're being drawn into the depths of the ocean. I was completely taken by her, and it almost killed me. I've lived a long life, but that was the closest I've come to death.
Ishin comments on her legendary swordsmanship, that she fights as if she is dancing. Ishin tells us that he was caught off guard and drawn into her eyes, to the point where he was almost killed by her. In my opinion, he most likely came to blows with her during his rebellion, where she will have been a member of the previous family's household, when she served Lord Takeru. This Tomoe, who once came into conflict with Ishin, would later go on to be the mentor of his grandson. The Remnants of Genichiro states the following. Genichiro took to the heretical arts and mastered the lightning of Tomoe. Inspired by his mentor, and fearing the clash of Genichiro dedicated himself to mastering this technique. We will later learn that the heretical arts is a reference to a skill taught by an outsider, in this case Tomoe. Emma remembers Genichiro's training years ago at the height of Ishin's reign. She said he would train up at the Fountainhead Springs.
There was a large spiral of clouds, visible in the distance. Lightning bolts would race from one cloud to the next. In fact, I distinctly recall Master Genichiro practicing his swordsmanship there, all the while glaring at the lightning in those clouds.
It would seem then, in order to master the powers of Tomoe, Genichiro's training involved him training amongst the lightning clouds. No doubt so he could draw on the powers of the lightning that he would use in the fight against us. Indeed, Genichiro would go to any lengths to save Ashina. In the end, he would even sacrifice himself to bring forth his grandfather from the afterlife. This version of the Sword Saint also seems to inherit this power from Genichiro, as he is born from his grandson's body. And in the final stages of the fight, Ishin will also manifest the lightning of Tomoe, and so her legacy seems to live on. Yet what do we know of her beyond this? What are her origins? Where did she come from? I believe that Tomoe is a descendant or member of the Okami clan, a clan which is described by the prosthetic tool as a clan of inhuman warrior women. The Okami's ancient text tell us that the Okami wanted to reach the divine realm, and indeed at the Fountainhead Palace, the blue aquatic warrior women that we fight here are of the Okami clan. They are clearly inhuman, and therefore fit the bill, and much like Tomoe, they fight in a dancing manner. The fragrant flower note given to us by Kuro and written by Takeru says this. It is said that the relatives of Tomoe once gathered the Fountainhead fragrance and arrived at the palace. Her ancestors are most obviously meant to be the Okami clan. As mentioned before, the Okami text tells us that their goal was to reach the divine realm, and that is what we face in the Fountainhead Palace. This also makes sense of our affinity with lightning-based attacks, given the way certain members of the clan do wield lightning against us, as do their strange dog creatures. And as one of them, Tomoe was able to wield this lightning, as described by Ishin. The floating passage combat art description tells us more of Tomoe's past. It states this. While an Ashina combat art it was taught by an outsider, and as such is considered heretical. The master of this technique crossed the floating passage and descended to Ashina. Her name was Tomoe. It would therefore seem that after some time, Tomoe of the Okami clan would leave Fountainhead Palace and descend from above to Ashina. It therefore seems to explain how these heretical arts, these weapon arts, came to Ashina. Her techniques would be taught to Genichiro, and later would be considered heretical, given they are explained by an outsider, and this explains the wording in Genichiro's remnant. Her inhuman appearance and background aside, in a lot of ways she is a reflection of ourselves, for she too was once the oathbound of one of the dragon's heritage, Lord Takeru. Lord Kuro gives us a very brief overview of what was once known of Lord Takeru.
I'm told that long ago there was another divine heir living here in Ashina Castle.
You're kidding me.
Takeru, this incense burner belonged to him.
Where is he now?
He died a long time ago, wrapped in the aroma of the fountainhead. I returned to the divine realm. Those are supposedly the words he left behind.
Lord Takeru once lived in this castle as Kuro does now. Like Sekiro, Tomoe was the immortal oathbound to the dragon's heir. On the face of it, the graves of Takeru and Tomoe can be found at the old grave of Ashina, as it is here that Lady Emma comes to visit these two. Given what Kuro tells us about Takeru's last words, I'm not sure that either of the bodies are actually here at the old grave. In fact, these are ornamental, meant to memorialize those thought lost. Like Kuro, Lord Takeru sought to sever the powers of the dragon blood, and it seems Tomoe played a similar role in this that we do now. For many of Takeru's journal entries seem to mention Tomoe's role. In the purification path, Lady Emma passes us a letter that is written by Tomoe herself. The diary
To commit suicide.
Why?
She said, those made immortal by the oath of the dragon's heritage shackle their masters.
But she was unable to achieve the purification.
Correct. She did not have the mortal blade.
We can therefore see that under the Everblossom, one day, Lady Emma witnessed Tomoe attempting to commit suicide, like we do in the purification ending. Yet it failed because they did not possess the mortal blade. Yet Takeru wanted only to sever the ties to the dragon's blood by any means necessary, as one of his diary entries reads as follows: "With my blood, the aroma will be complete, the divine realm will be in reach, immortal severance at hand. I must ask Tomoe to assist in the beheading." Clearly, Takeru intended that he would follow the immortal severance path, and like us in the immortal severance ending, he envisioned Tomoe being the one to end his life. But again, it seems that any path that these two tried to take was stymied by the lack of a mortal blade. Beyond these failed attempts, we aren't exactly sure as to how this situation resolved or didn't resolve. Kuro tells us that Lord Takeru said he returned to the divine realm. It is possible that he did, and just never returned. Another possibility is that they were able to finally get hold of the black mortal blade, and an immortal severance was achieved. Either way, Tomoe would live long enough to pass on her lightning techniques and her heretical swordsmanship to Genichiro and other members of Ashina. Whether or not these graves in Ashina are really their graves, or just a memorial to the lost, we do not know for certain. But one final interesting point of note is that we find a dragon's blood droplet item on the grave. these items forming the blood of the divine heir is shed, suggesting that Takeru's blood may have been finally shed. Thanks guys, that's my take on Tomoe, the mysterious sorcerer. If you like this video, please give that a like and a subscribe, as there's more content. Thanks for sticking around guys, and all the best. Far from the deepest part of the sunken valley lives a great beast of immense power and size, known to us as the Guardian Ape. Sitting in his watering hole, the great beast is alone and has various wounds, most notably a sword right through his shoulder coming out his chest. The great beast clearly has a history and has existed in this home for some time. What is this history? The sculptor once led a different life, a life in which he was a shinobi, known as Orangutan. In his time as a shinobi, he and his partner would live like the monkeys do down in the vines of the sunken valley. He said this:
trained in the techniques of the shinobi, in the valley where the monkeys dwell.
By yourself?
No, there were two of us. We were rogue shinobi. There was no proper master for the likes of us. That's why we went to the valley. To jump, to clash swords. The one slip would mean you're doomed. That was how we trained. We came to move exactly as monkeys did after a time. I drank this monkey booze whenever I tired of training. And I'd listen to the howl of my partner's whistling finger while I drank.
Fuck! He's so hard to parry!
This memory gives us a look into the past of the valley. The valley is home to the monkeys, and it is a beautiful, tranquil place. And it is therefore not hard to imagine two shinobi finding a measure of peace and adventure here, with the sculptor eventually being able to move like the monkeys in the valley. We know that his weapon of choice would have been the shinobi axe for the monkey, as the item description tells us that this was the weapon of the bounding monkey of the sunken valley. His partner, who held the finger whistle that he describes in his memory, was known as the Kingfisher, and as far as we can tell, Kingfisher was a woman. For the item picture reads as follows: the slender finger of a young woman can be fitted to the shinobi prosthetic to create a prosthetic tool. Found in the belly of the guardian ape, it is partially digested. Just as a note here, I do understand there's some confusion over the gender of this shinobi, given the conflicted uses of he and she, but for the purposes of this video and simplicity, I will just refer to them as she. The item also suggests that her ultimate fate was her being eaten, but we will cover this in a minute. We get her name from the malcontent upgrade for the finger whistle, and we can link this character that's been described in the item descriptions to the sculptor's old partner, due to the fact that this is the item he described in his memory. The malcontent prosthetic expands upon this. Kingfisher is etched onto the ring. The kingfisher's cry could be heard along the waterfront of the sunken valley. Now she cries no more. The orangutan and the kingfisher would fight, drink, and train here together, yet something happened.
Oh, there are 4 endings. Let's read this together. Huh, we can't. Okay. Alright, so. First ending. The shooter ending. When you eventually return to Ashna Tower, you'll find it in a state of fury destruction. Okay. In the 4 detailed endings, we won't actually detail the specific events of each ending. We'll leave that unspoiled for you. Sick. Secure Shura ending. Eventually, when you return, you have the previous battle with Genichiro. Ashna, the Great Shinobi Owl, will be waiting for you. Speak to Owl and he'll request you remember the Iron Code of Shinobi and effectively forsake your mission with Kuro. If you greet the Owl and abandon Kuro, you'll get the Shura ending. Note, Sekiro will end with 2 boss encounters right after this, and then it's curtains on the game. This is the fastest way to roll credits on Sekiro, but is considered to be the bad ending. Immortal Severance. Alternatively, when you meet Owl atop Ashina Castle, you can reject Owl's request. You proceed through several additional areas of the game, making it all the way to Divine Dragon boss, and then having another final showdown with a different boss to bring close to the game. Okay. Sekiro Purification ending. The Purification ending for Sekiro is an alternate ending after you reject Owl and side with Kuro at Ashina Castle. Immediately after ensuing boss fight from abandoning Owl has played out, you need to complete the following steps in this exact order. Interesting. Okay. That's only 3 endings. Return ending, Purification ending, Immortal, and Shura. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna do the true ending. And then we'll work on the other endings. Okay.
You taught me well.
That's my boy.
Is this direct gameplay and not speech? Okay. Okay.